Hey Divination, thank you for joining us in this live stream, and today I will show you how to create a contact form corner pop-up with Divi and the Chiropractor Layout Pack. So if you haven't checked that out yet, make sure that you do. I've mentioned a link in the description below, and if you're not an Elegant Themes member yet, make sure that you check out Divi. I've mentioned the link in the description below where you can go ahead and discover everything for yourself. So without any further ado, let's get to it. Alright, so let's start off by taking a look at the Chiropractor Layout Pack. So this is the overall look and feel that you can expect from it, and if you want to lay your hands on it, you can go to elegantthemes.com/layouts, and over here you have all of the different layout packs that come with Divi for free. And if you scroll down, you'll come across the Chiropractor Layout Pack, and you can view all of the different layouts that come with this layout pack by clicking on the blue button which says View Live Demo, and this will redirect you to a live website where you can go ahead and discover all of the different layouts without actually having to install them first. So in this live stream tutorial, we're going to use this layout pack and add a fixed bottom right corner contact form, as you can see on the screen over here. So this is what it looks like. When you scroll, it stays fixed, and if you click on it, it opens, and if you click on it again, it'll close. And let's take a look at the outcome across different screen sizes. So on mobile, for instance, I'm just selecting an iPhone. We have this icon over here, so it's smaller, it matches the screen size, and if you click on it, it opens. If you click on it again, it closes, and people can just fill in the form and submit it to you. So you can customize this design according to your own needs, but in this tutorial we'll recreate this particular example from scratch. And the first thing you will need to do is upload a new page using one of the chiropractor layouts or any other layout. Really, you can make this work on any kind of website you're building by going through these steps. So I'm just going to enable the visual builder at the top. Just waiting for my page to load, and so go ahead and upload a layout of your choice, or just open a page that you already have set up, and then go ahead and scroll down to the bottom of your page and add a new regular section. And before adding any rows or modules, we're going to open the section settings, and the first thing we'll do here is change the background color. So what we'll do is we'll use an entirely transparent background color, and the reason why we're doing that is to make sure that the section, because we're using a section to make this work, the section remains transparent and everything below it shows through. So if this were another color here, instead of a completely transparent color, it would show up, but it really depends on what design you want to create. So for this particular design, you'll definitely need to make sure that it's an entirely transparent background color. And the next thing we're going to do is go to the sizing settings. So we're going to shrink the size of our section to make it fit in the bottom right corner. And I'm just going to grab those sizing values really quick. So these values will be different across different screen sizes. So for instance, on desktop, it'll be 37%, and then on tablet and phone, it will be a higher percentage. Let me just open these responsive options over here really quick. So 37%. And 95% on desktop, on tablet I mean, and 100% on phone. Okay, and we're also going to enable right section alignments to make sure that it appears at the bottom right corner of our page. And then we can move on to the spacing settings, and over here we're just going to remove the top default padding and we'll make it 0 pixels. You can also add it to the bottom if you want to. And we'll also need to add a CSS class to the section. And later on this tutorial, we're going to add a few lines of jQuery code to make the click function happen. And to do that, we'll need this section over here, first of all, and then we'll have to assign another section later on the tutorial. And then we'll go to the visibility settings over here, and I'm going to enable the hover option and add 99 to the default set index, but also make sure that it's 99 on hover as well. So you don't have to add it over here, but just make sure that the hover option is enabled so it takes over that default value. And now we can start adding our row. And we're going to need a 1 column row. And before adding any modules, we're going to open these row settings over here, and you can make sure that the background is also transparent, but I think by default it's usually transparent. So I'm just going to add it anyways, but usually a row doesn't have a background color assigned to it, but you can also make sure that it's transparent or actually change the color using the row settings over here. And the first module we'll need over here is a blurb module. And the only reason why we're using this blurb module is for its icon. So I'm just going to remove the copy over here along with the image. I'm going to use an image instead, an icon instead. Now let me just grab that icon really quick. Okay, so this is the one that we're using. You can choose any icon of your choice really. And we're also going to give it a white background color. So it's really necessary that you add this background color, but it could be another color as well. So say for instance, you want it reversed, you could add an orange background color to the blurb module and make the icon white instead. But we're doing it this way, so you need to add a white background color. And then move on to the design tab and change the icon settings. And again, we're going to make sure that these values match the different screen sizes. So we're using 46 pixels for desktop, 30 pixels for tablet, and 25 pixels for phone. All right. And then we can move on to the sizing settings. And over here, I'm going to add some custom width options. And I'm also going to use right module alignment to place the icon at the bottom right corner of the entire page. So what we're using is 140 pixels for desktop and 105 pixels for tablet and 80 pixels for phone. So I would definitely recommend that you use pixel values over here for the width, because later on we're going to add some rounded corners and we'll create a circular shape, and using a width in pixels will help keep everything responsive across screen sizes, since we're using pixels for the icon and pixels for the padding and stuff like that. So make sure that you use pixels over here. And then we'll move on to the spacing settings, and we're going to shape our module. Let me just add those values over here. All right, so we're using 50 pixels for the top and 20 pixels for the bottom. The reason why we're adding 20 pixels to the bottom instead of 50 is because the icon creates some bottom margin of itself, and to compensate for that, it's 30 pixels actually. So the bottom margin of a icon is 30 pixels, and that just it leaves some space in between the icon and the title text that is normally there. So to compensate for that, we'll just add 20 pixels instead here. And then we'll use 35 pixels for the top on tablet, and then for the bottom on tablet, and 25 pixels for the top on phone, and 0 pixels for the bottom on phone as well. Okay, so now we can move on to the border settings. And over here, we're just going to give it a very high value. So let me just add 500 pixels. This is actually not the input that is needed to create a circle, but I always want to make sure. And it really doesn't make a difference whether you're adding 100 pixels or 60 pixels or whatever. As long as the value is high enough, it'll create the maximum outcome. There's this maximum input or effect that is caused by the border settings. And then we'll go to the box shadow options, and over here we're going to just make it show up, so the shape and all of that, and we'll also increase the blur strength to 80 pixels. Okay, and last but not least, in the design tab is going to the animation settings over here, and by default there is an icon animation going on, and we're just going to remove it by selecting no animation. Okay, so now we just have to add a CSS class to this icon as well. So this will be the trigger of the contact form opening. So we'll just call it contact open. So if you click on this, it'll open. So it just triggers the effect. So definitely make sure that you add this CSS class. It's really necessary, otherwise it won't work. Now we can move on to the next row, and it is again a one column row. And we're going to open the row settings first. We're going to create a similar effect to the icon. So we'll use a box shadow, a white background color. Let's start with the white background color over here, and then we'll go to the border settings and we'll add 39 pixels to each one of the corners, and we'll also add a subtle box shadow, the same one actually. We'll increase the blur strength to 80 pixels, and now we can add our contact form. All right, so this is the only module that we need over here. It already shows up. First of all, we're going to disable the captcha, but you can leave it on. I just like it better when it doesn't show from an aesthetically, viewpoint, I would say. And then I'll go to the field settings here. I'm going to change the field's background color. So the color palette that we're using really matches the Chiropractor Layout Pack, but feel free to modify everything as long as you keep the structure the same. So the CSS classes, the jQuery code, and some CSS code that we'll add later on, and making sure that it's at the bottom right of the section of the page, of the entire page, and stuff like that. So you can definitely notice some things that are important, but the styling of everything is really up to you. You can modify everything exactly the way you want to, just make sure that those main steps are there, and you can always test it out, see if it's working right. So next we're going to go to the button over here. So I've used this color code, and you can go to the blog post, which I've mentioned in the description below, if you want to grab all of the color codes, or if you want to read through all of the steps individually. So the next thing we're going to do is style the button, and let me just grab that really quick. So the buttons usually need most styling because there are so many options, so many things that you can change over here. So I'm just going to copy paste them to save you guys a little bit of time. So let me just add those over here. But again, you can, play around with these settings, but these are the settings that I'm using. I'm using 16 pixels for the button text size. I'm using this background color, and I'm changing it to black on hover. I'm using a completely transparent button border color. So this is actually, the styles of this button are the same as the ones that are used throughout the entire page layout. So go ahead and just, use whatever kind of style you want, but you can definitely notice it over here that it's the same kind of style that is going on. I'm using Carla as a button font as well. And next step is adding some spacing values. So as you can notice, over here it just touches the border. I don't really like how that looks, so I'm going to add some custom padding, and that will be 30 pixels for the top and the bottom padding, and 40 pixels for the left and right side. All right, so this is done. So of course you'll have to add all of the, submission form details. So the text, success message, you'll have to link your email and stuff like that. So this is the design that we have up until now. And the next part is adding a code module. And let me just take a quick look at the chat on YouTube and on Facebook, see if you guys have any questions. All right, so someone's asking if I could share the JSON file. The reason why I haven't included this in the post is because there's some page CSS code. The tutorial is really easy. You really have to add just, a section, 2 rows, 2 modules, and you can just leave them unstyled to just test it out. But there's some CSS code that we'll need to add to the page, and that's why I haven't included the JSON file, because some people, don't read through everything and would expect to just upload the file and have it work right away, and they would skip steps like adding CSS code to the page, which is really necessary, and it isn't exported with a JSON file. So for that reason, I wanted people to read through it and just understand the method behind it and just make it apply to a particular page they're working on. All right, so the next module that we need over here is a code module. And now I'm going to add some jQuery code, and you can grab this jQuery code by going to the blog post in the description below, and you can just copy and paste it. Just make sure that your CSS classes of the section and of the blurb module are correctly. Otherwise, you can also change the CSS classes in the code itself if you know a bit about jQuery. And now that we've done that, we can go over to the sizing settings of Divi. So with Divi's new sizing settings, you can make some tweaks. So this is the initial design that we have over here. And with the new sizing settings, you can definitely create some nice things. And we've actually covered a few tutorials, I think, that reveal certain stuff. That's something that I really like using the sizing sections for, the sizing settings, excuse me. And over here, what we'll do is we'll just paste the height. So it's 191 pixels for desktop, and then on phone on tablet we have 140 and 125 for phone. Let me just show you guys really quick. So you'll definitely have to tweak these values across different screen sizes to make sure that it shows up correctly. One tip that I do want to give you guys, so I'm using pixels for everything in this tutorial. So for all of the icon font sizes, for all of the spacing, I'm using for all of the width, for the height. So if you decide to go with pixels, or if you decide to go with VW or whatever, just make sure that you stick with it for everything throughout the tutorial to make sure that not a certain part of the contact form shows up. So you have to be really precise with that. So these are the height settings that you have to apply if you're working with pixels, which we are doing in this tutorial. And then we'll go to the advanced tab of the section, and we're going to make it sticky to the bottom right corner. And to do that, we'll just add 3 lines of CSS code. So bottom 0, right 0, and position fixed. So this is a nice thing. So a quick effect that these 3 lines of CSS code allow you to achieve. And as you can notice, it isn't really necessary for you to hide the overflows in the visibility settings. Normally, if this wouldn't be fixed, you'd have to do that. But since it's fixed, it just doesn't show up at all. I'm just going to save it really quick. And another important thing is enabling the hover option on the main element over here. Going to hover and adding position fixed here as well. Let me just show you guys why that is. I think it's important to explain why I'm doing something. So as you can notice over here, if I hover it, it flickers, and that's because it isn't fixed on hover. So you definitely need to add a position fixed on hover here, and I'll change it and make it act exactly the way you want it. So now it doesn't happen. So just 1 line of CSS code on the hover main element that says position fixed helps you prevent glitches. And the last thing that we need to do is add a bit of page code. So let me just open this module, this code module that we've added. So I'm first going to add the CSS code. So again, you can grab it in the blog post by going to it, and I've mentioned it in the description below. So this is the only thing that you need to add over here. So what this basically does is it just brings back the height to the initial height size that is created by the rows and by the modules, all of the elements within the section. So let me just open this code module over here. I'm just going to explain to you guys really quick what this does. So as soon as the contact open is clicked, which is the blur module over here, this will happen, a toggle will happen. So the section open, as soon as you click it, the section open class, so the section class will apply this CSS code, which means height equals autumn, which means it brings it back to the initial size. And this toggle class over here just switches between the class and without the class, if that makes sense. It's the best way I can explain it. It just toggles between these settings, so the settings that you've applied and the settings that you add on click. Let me just open it. So it just keeps this blurb module as the trigger. So if you want to change the CSS classes for some kind of reason, make sure that you change it within the code as well. And this is the outcome that we're getting from that. All right, so let me just take a quick look to see if there's any more questions. If you guys have any questions, make sure that you leave them in the chat on YouTube or on Facebook. So someone asks what the best steps would be to becoming a pro Divi developer. I would recommend just getting to know Divi first through the documentation, through tutorials, being part of the Facebook group, and just, you know, steadily build towards it, learn how to work with CSS classes and CSS IDs in general with jQuery code and how it works within Divi itself. And from that point on, you'll only, you know, feel attracted to it and want to learn more about it. That's actually how I got into it. I really liked working around with Divi. And, you know, if I don't see any more questions, what if I want the success to a thanks page? I think that's possible within the contact form settings over here. So you can redirect over here in the contact form settings, enable redirect URL, and just add it over here. It's the same way it always works, even if it's, you know, in its regular position, not fixed to the bottom right corner. You can just use this. Besides that, I don't see any more questions. So thank you all for watching. We hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and we'll see you